Hello and welcome back to the arena. Today we are going to do something a little bit different. We are going to talk about the mana base in Magic the Gathering Arena, specifically in Standard, what you should be crafting, what you should be ignoring, and what you should be using in very specific circumstances. One of the things about the economy in Arena, as well as in physical cards, is you will spend more resources on mana than anything else. Yes, the most boring part of Magic the Gathering, play a land, is the most expensive in real life as well as on Arena. And the reason is how necessary they are in order to play the game competitively, in order to play the game well, in order to get your things out when you want them out. Not only will we talk about specific mana that you should be crafting and prioritizing over anything else, I also have a specific little trick which I am doing with this profile. If you are unaware, August 1st, 2023, I started a brand new profile, and lo and behold, we are doing it 100% free to play, and I am going to try to be competitive in Standard. I am going to be competitive in Explorer, and I am going to try to be competitive in Historic as well. We already have Historic nailed away with Azorius artifacts, and we are moving into Standard with a mono blue tempo deck, which we will discuss in a later video. But while doing this free-to-play account, I started realizing that there are a lot of lands that I do not have access to because it is a free-to-play account, and that is what is slowing down the progress of this entire, not only channel, because I try to post only in this is just my journey as it goes, but my adventures into Standard, my adventures into Explorer specifically at this moment in time. Progress is being made, but after 2 months, it has been, well, it's been a little bit slow, but that is to be expected on a free-to-play brand new account. So, I actually did something for you guys. You will see in the description of this video a list of every single rare and mythic land that is in Standard right now. And I have assigned priority to these based off of how much I think they do for the account. We are going to talk about the types of lands that are in this, but I'm going to put this in the video. This is going to be in the description below because I think it's very neat and it's a nice way of organizing things. One thing you could do is you could hit colors and you could select Azorius and white, which is what we are going to be going into on this channel, and it will show you all of the rare lands and mythic lands that are in the colors of red and white. You can make an argument that I should have put Mirex in here because it loves to be in Azorius, but you know, it is not in Azorius. As you can see, we have this search chrome coasts. We don't need the fortified beaches. I put that on 0 necessity. We do need the 4 deserted beaches, and we need 2 Ijanjo, Seat of the Empires, and we also need 2 of Otawara Soaring Cities. I didn't put blue on there, and I should have, but hey, Otawara Soaring Cities, we need 2 of those as well in order to optimize this account fully, meaning that I need a total of 8 lands to go into an Azorius basic build. If we wanted to make this a very competitive build, we would have to add 4 more of these at a card waste, but for now, we need 8 rare lands. And as you can see, we don't have the economy for it. But what should we prioritize? Well, let's start with these spells. For this particular account, I am going to be crafting 1 to 2 Ijanjo Seat of the Empires and 1 to 2 Otawara Soaring Cities. The reason is because I have already started to build out the cards that are blue and white. And since this is such a budget profile, we need to stick to 1 or 2 colors that we are going to prioritize. I have chose white and I have chose blue to prioritize for the first year of this campaign. For this reason, we are going to prioritize Otawara, Soaring City, and Ijanjo, Seat of the Empire, even though I think Otawara, Soaring City is the worst of the legendary lands that are nice little spells. They're nice. They're nice to have in every deck because, first off, they come in untapped, but you never want to have more than 2 of these in any particular deck because, lo and behold, you cannot have 2 copies of one of these on the field. Therefore, 2 Ijanjo, Seat of the Empires, and 1 Otawara because it is a weaker card, but it might actually pull us out of a couple of pinches. So maybe we are crafting 2 of those, right? So I would prioritize a specific color or 2 specific colors and start building out that way. I chose Azorius because I really like control builds. That's the primary reason. So these are good, but there are many more important lands than these. Unless you're playing like a mono-colored deck, and like mono red, for example, you might put 2 Sokenzans in there, and you're not going to be hurt. But let's just say that you wanted to build a 2-color deck. And we're going to be focusing on the idea that you want to create a 2-color deck from this point in the video forward. There are 2 very specific different strategies that we could go. We have fast lands and we have slow lands, and they both serve different purposes, and big spendy boys are going to put both in. Eventually, we will have both fast lands and slow lands in each of these decks. But let's talk about fast lands first. Having your lands come into the battlefield untapped is very strong, but basic lands are fairly weak because they only come out as one or another color. If you are playing blue and white and you draw an island when you really wanted a plains, you're going to be hurting. So having 2 colors to cast spells with of different colors is powerful. Therefore, dual lands are very powerful. They're talked about all over the place in the community, but they serve different purposes. Generally, you have to pay a price for lands coming in untapped that are dual lands. For the Dark Slick Shores, that price is it comes into play tapped if you control 3 lands on the field already. This will come in tapped. These are more suited for an aggro build. Aggro-y players are going to want to play these, especially Gruul kind of stuff, Selesnya kind of stuff, very strong. The Azorius Search Rome Coast is very powerful as well because we want to be able to play our things on curve. These I would highly prioritize if you are playing an aggro. If you are playing mid-range and control, I would highly recommend using the slow lands, which come into play tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. So if you control an island, you control a swamp, and then you drop a Haunted Ridge, it comes in untapped. If you are playing a mid-range thing where your best drops are 3, 4, and 5, you are probably wanting to play the slow lands in your deck. And if you have them, you're always going to put them in no matter what, but that is where they are best, in decks that want to have a nice curve into 3 and 4 using removals on turn 1 and 2 in order to control the pace of the game, and then into Shieldred on turn 4. I would say Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but we are currently in Standard, therefore you are not going to be seeing it. So if you're playing a slower deck, that you want things out 3, 4, and beyond, these are going to be your best option. I will say a little bit extra about control. Control really wants to have mana up turns 1 through 100, and if the game goes 100 rounds with a control player, so be it. So in all honesty, fast lands are incredibly important, and slow lands are incredibly important for a control player. That's the expense of control. It's the control tax, if you will. We also have cards that are, what shall you say, extraordinary when good, but I wouldn't so much prioritize these over having either 1 or 2 in your deck, and that is the new creature lands. They are back, baby, and when you have extra mana to dump into things, these are very, very good. But if you don't, then they're very, very bad, especially because these come into play tapped. I would put a couple of these in any particular deck, and if you don't have anything that you have to curve into for that turn, throw it in on the field, play your turn out, and then you're done with it. It's come on taps the next turn. You could use it as a creature. I do like these because they are dual lands in and of themselves. They tap for Orzhov mana. They tap for Simic. They tap for Boros, Gogori, and Izzet. And that's fantastic. I haven't seen a lot of dual lands that are also creatures, and I think that's kind of cool. They're a little bit underpowered for how much they cost, but hey, if you have the mana to dump into something like this, then go for it. I wouldn't prioritize these necessarily, but they're not bad. If you have them laying around in your collection, I would definitely be playing with them, but only 1 or 2 in every deck. There's also what I'm calling the ping lands, and everybody has mixed opinions on these guys. The guys that come into play untapped, they could tap for colorless, and they deal 1 damage to you if you tap them for either of the 2 colors that they are representing. In this case, blue or red, you will take 1 damage. And later on in the game, you're tapping your other lands for the red or the blue, and you're tapping this for colorless. Now, a lot of people think very negatively about these, or at least I've heard some negative vibes about them in the interweb, but I actually really like them. In fact, I almost prefer them to either fast lands or slow lands, because lo and behold, it's always going to come into play untapped. And we know that there is a price to pay whenever you have a dual land come into play that is untapped. There's always a price, and this one is that it does 1 damage to you every time you tap it for mana. Now, if you're stuck on 4 Yavimaya Coasts, especially in green and blue, you're hurting yourself quite a bit if something costs 3 green and you're stuck on these guys and no other lands whatsoever. It is painful. It is quite painful. The shuffler is sometimes our friend and sometimes our worst enemy, and if you have that draw, that is your worst enemy time. But overall, for the most part, having these lands in your deck are going to help you a lot more than they're going to hurt you. So these are kind of the glue that run in between the fast and the slow lands. You can almost set up your fast and slow lands just with the ping lands in and of themselves. There's only 2 other land types in standard that we have to talk about, and I wanted to take some extra time with these 2 just because this is very much so more nuanced. And we're going to start with the triomes, and that came out with Streets of New Capenna. If you are playing on a budget, if you are new, or you just don't have them, I would not prioritize triomes. It is very rare that a 3 and 4 color deck is good. Atraxa would say otherwise, but it is unnecessary. Those decks are flashy. Those decks are actually very good and very difficult to beat, but it makes your land base that much more expensive. And it also makes you feel a little bit silly when somebody has a demolition field and you have no basic lands in your deck because they're all rare lands. Well, these, honestly, as far as my account goes, we are not prioritizing these at all. Maybe at some point in the future when this account starts to balloon out and become a little bit larger, we might prioritize a deck that uses triomes, but it's not going to be something that you want to prioritize early on. And if you're watching this video, I would imagine that you are trying to figure out mana and the mana bases and this and that, and are still fairly new to the game or haven't played in a while. And if you haven't played in a while, then you probably don't have all the rare lands for standard, which means I would not prioritize these because 3-color decks have a lot of downfalls, and a lot of that comes down to mana. If I were to play a deck that ran 4 Spar's Headquarters, well, I would have to craft the fast and slow lands for Azorius, Simic, and Selesnya. And that's a lot of lands in order to have a completely optimized mana base. And a lot of times you just cycle these anyway. I mean, these are very good. Do not get me wrong. These are incredibly powerful lands. But when you are starting out, I would not prioritize these. They are not for basic decks. They are not for basic strategies. And especially challenging myself to build this account out from scratch. Yeah, we don't have an economy that's going to be very inclusive of having triomes. And then, last but not least, and the drum roll, is specialty lands. There are some of these that are very, very, very important, like Mirix and Plaza of Hero, for very specific decks. Mirix is, of course, very good in control decks, very good in slow decks, and it does a lot of work. But I would not prioritize 4 of these, nor would I prioritize these on a very small budget, on a free-to-play brand new account. I would not do that. And Plaza of Heroes asks you to play mostly legendary creatures, which could be good, and it could also be bad. I'm torn with this card because on one hand, I know it's an incredibly good card, but on the other hand, I know that you have to have a very specific build to take advantage of this. If we were to be completely honest, I want this video to be kind of a what should I craft overall. And that's not what these cards do. They're very specific for very specific decks. I mean, Blast Zone is incredible. I love this card. I would prioritize having 1 or 2 of these at some point, but they're not necessary. These are just added things. If you see people playing Blast Zones and Mirix and Plaza of Heroes, you know they probably have all of the cards, or at least a good majority of them. These should be kind of last on your list to do. So after talking about them all, what should you prioritize? Well, craft in 1 color or 1 pair of colors. Craft in 1 pair of colors the lands that you're going to need. Start there. You could do the rest later on your own time. I would also prioritize fast lands, especially for aggro. Fast lands, if you're playing aggro, that's the first one. Second, slow lands. Third, ping lands. In that order. If you're playing mid-range, I would prioritize slow lands, ping lands, fast lands, in that order. If you are playing control, I would do probably slow lands, fast lands, ping lands. And then you fill it out with different spells that you want, if you want some Ijanjos or some Atawaras. But depending on the colors that you're running, these guys are always going to be able to be decent at least. If you're playing some sort of tempo deck like our Azorius Artifacts, well, I prioritized fast lands for that because I want to be playing things as soon as I get them into my hand. I want them to be on the field or I want to be countering things. Therefore, I need those mana up and alive and awake, untapped, ready to do action, ready to be tapped for some sort of benefit. And there you have it. Those are the lands. Again, I am going to leave the Excel sheet in the description below. I've shown you how to kind of go through it a little bit. If you have questions about it, please let me know. If you want to use it and do whatever you want with it, please do so. It will not bother me one bit, and hopefully you find some use out of it. If you did enjoy this, please like the video. It shows me that you actually did enjoy the content, and it allows me to do it in Explorer. It allows me to do it in Historic. But I have to see a little bit of support for this sort of content for me to want to do it again. Thank you for joining today. Make sure that you've liked the video and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time in the arena. Bye.